This person loves you. But they're afraid to tell you why. My beloved child. There is a reason this person becomes quiet whenever their feelings for you get too close to the surface, and it is not because their heart is empty. It is because their heart is carrying something they have been terrified to put into words. Don't skip, because what they are afraid to tell you may completely change the way you understand their silence. For a long time, you may have noticed the contradictions. One moment, they seem drawn toward you as if being near you feels natural. The next moment, they pull back, become careful, and hide behind ordinary conversations. You may have wondered why someone who seems to care so deeply would make everything feel so complicated. But there is something happening beneath those quiet moments that you cannot see. This person has imagined telling you everything more times than you would ever guess. They have rehearsed conversations in their mind. They have imagined your expression. They have wondered whether you would smile, become surprised, or suddenly see them differently. Yet every time they get close to saying what is truly inside their heart, one thought stops them: what if telling you changes everything? Stay till the end, because their biggest fear is not simply rejection. It goes much deeper than that. They are afraid that once you understand why they love you, they will no longer be able to pretend that this connection is ordinary. Something about you reached a place inside them that they had carefully protected for a very long time. It was not one dramatic moment. It happened through small things they never expected to remember. The way you handled something difficult without demanding attention, the way your presence stayed in their thoughts after a simple conversation, the way you made them feel understood without forcing them to explain themselves. And that frightened them, because they realized their feelings were no longer something they could easily control. Don't skip. Something huge is waiting for you, because the reason they have remained silent is connected to a truth they have never comfortably admitted even to themselves. They did not expect you. They did not plan for you. And they certainly did not expect one person to make them question the emotional walls they had spent so much time building. What makes this even more surprising is that they may have tried to convince themselves that these feelings would disappear. They may have created distance, stayed busy, answered differently, or told themselves that they were simply overthinking everything. But distance did something they never expected. Instead of making you less important, it made your absence louder. They started noticing the moments when they wanted to tell you something first. They started wondering what you would think about ordinary details in their day. They caught themselves remembering things you said long after the conversation had ended. And somewhere inside that realization, fear entered. Stay till the end, because this is where the story becomes deeper. Their fear is not that they do not know what they feel. Their fear is that they know exactly what they feel. Loving someone from a safe distance can remain hidden, but speaking those feelings aloud creates a possibility they cannot control. What if you feel the same? What if everything changes? What if this becomes real enough that they finally have something meaningful to lose? That question has been following them. They have experienced moments when they wanted to reach toward you emotionally, only to stop themselves at the last second. Perhaps you noticed the hesitation. Perhaps you felt that unfinished sentence hanging between you. Perhaps there was a moment when their eyes, their tone, or their sudden silence seemed to reveal more than their words ever did. You were not necessarily imagining the tension. There may have been something they wanted to express but could not bring themselves to finish. Don't skip, because here is the once-in-a-lifetime realization they are struggling with: you did not become important to them because you chased their attention. You became important because something about your presence made them feel seen without being pressured to perform. That kind of connection can be beautiful, but for someone accustomed to protecting their emotions, it can also feel terrifying. They cannot easily explain why your smallest actions stay with them. They cannot explain why your name can suddenly change their mood. And they cannot explain why the possibility of losing your place in their life now feels heavier than they ever expected. But there is one more truth beneath all of this, and this may be the real reason they have not told you why they love you. They are afraid that if they explain it honestly, you will realize just how deeply you have affected them. Their answer would not be simple. They could not merely say, "I like you," and walk away unchanged. They would have to admit that you arrived during a chapter when they were not expecting anyone to matter this much. They would have to admit that certain conversations with you stayed with them during quiet nights. They would have to admit that when they imagined their future, your presence somehow began appearing in places where nobody had been before. Something huge is waiting for you, because the silence you have been trying to understand may actually be the final wall between what they feel privately and what they are finally becoming brave enough to acknowledge. Stay till the end. Their hesitation has been growing weaker, and something recently shifted inside them. A small moment made them realize that remaining silent carries its own risk. They started asking themselves a question they had avoided for too long: what if I wait so long that this person believes I never cared? That thought hit differently. Suddenly, hiding their feelings no longer felt safe. It felt dangerous to the connection they were trying to protect. They began understanding that silence can create the exact distance they were afraid of experiencing. And now they are standing emotionally between two choices: keep everything hidden and wonder forever what might have happened, or finally allow you to see the truth. Don't skip, because there is still something they have not revealed, something even more personal than their feelings themselves. There is a specific reason they believe you became different from everyone else. A moment they remember clearly. A moment you may not even realize mattered. To you, it might have seemed completely ordinary. To them, it changed the emotional direction of everything. And when you discover what happened in that moment, you may finally understand why this person loves you, and why saying the reason aloud has frightened them more than the feeling itself. There was one moment they never managed to forget, even though you probably walked away from it without realizing anything extraordinary had happened. It was not some perfect romantic scene. There was no dramatic confession, no carefully planned conversation, no obvious sign telling either of you that something important had just changed. It was something much smaller, and that is exactly why it affected them so deeply. You showed them a side of yourself that felt genuine when you had absolutely no reason to impress anyone. Maybe it was the patience in your voice when circumstances became frustrating. Maybe it was the way you listened when someone else needed to be heard. Maybe you remembered a tiny detail everyone else would have forgotten. Whatever the exact moment was, something inside this person became unexpectedly still. They looked at you differently after that. Don't skip, because this is where their hidden reason begins to reveal itself. Until then, they could tell themselves they were simply interested in you. They could call it curiosity. attraction, admiration. Anything that sounded temporary enough to control. But after that moment, those explanations stopped working. They realized they were not only noticing how you looked or what you said, they were noticing who you seemed to be when nobody was asking you to prove anything. And that realization frightened them because it touched something they had been quietly searching for without knowing how to describe it. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. The person who appears uncertain around you may actually be uncertain about themselves. They keep wondering whether they are ready to be seen as clearly as they have started seeing you. They know that telling you why they love you would reveal their own vulnerable side. They would have to explain why your kindness mattered. Why your strength caught their attention. Why certain imperfections made you feel more real instead of less valuable. And most importantly, they would have to admit that this was never about one impressive quality. It was the combination of small things that slowly became impossible for them to ignore. That is why their silence has lasted. A simple attraction would have been easier to confess. This feels different to them, and they do not yet know how to say something this meaningful without exposing just how much emotional power the truth carries. Then something happened that made hiding these feelings even harder. They began noticing other people noticing you. Not necessarily romantically, simply recognizing the qualities they had privately discovered first. Someone appreciated your personality. Someone laughed at something you said. Someone respected the way you handled yourself. And suddenly this person felt an emotion they had been trying very hard not to examine. It was not about controlling you. It was the uncomfortable realization that the world was not going to freeze while they gathered enough courage to speak. You have your own life, your own choices, your own future, and they cannot expect you to remain emotionally available while they stay silent forever. Don't skip, because that realization changed the question inside their mind. Before, they kept asking, what happens if I tell them? Now another question has appeared, what happens if I never do? And strangely, that second question scares them more. They have started imagining a future where you continue moving forward and they are left carrying words they never said. They imagine hearing someday that you found someone who recognized your value and had the courage to show it. They imagine smiling politely while privately knowing they once had an opportunity to be honest. That possibility has begun breaking through every excuse they used to protect themselves. Stay till the end. Their silence is no longer comfortable. Every meaningful interaction with you makes the truth harder to hide. Every time you show them warmth, they wonder whether you already sense what is happening. Every time you become quiet, they wonder whether their hesitation has confused you. And every time you create even a little distance, their mind starts asking whether they waited too long. Something huge is waiting for you, because the deepest secret is becoming clearer. They are not afraid to tell you because their feelings are weak. They are afraid because explaining those feelings would require them to acknowledge that you have become important enough to change their decisions. You have made them reconsider what they want from connection, what emotional honesty means to them, and whether constantly protecting themselves is worth losing something meaningful. They never expected one person to bring all those questions to the surface. Yet here you are. And now they are approaching an emotional turning point they cannot postpone forever. They have started understanding something powerful. Courage does not always arrive before the conversation. Sometimes courage appears only after someone decides the truth matters more than the fear. That is where this person seems to be heading. They may still hesitate. They may still overthink the first sentence. They may still imagine 10 different outcomes before saying anything meaningful. But something inside them is changing. Don't skip, because what comes next could explain everything. They are beginning to understand that if they ever tell you why they love you, they do not want to give you a shallow answer. They want you to understand that it was not one perfect moment that captured their heart. It was how you kept becoming memorable without trying. It was how your presence felt different when they were having an ordinary day. It was how they could be surrounded by noise and still remember something you had said hours earlier. It was how they began wanting to become more honest with themselves simply because hiding around you started feeling exhausting. Stay till the end, because there is another layer they have told almost nobody. At some point, they made a quiet decision about you. Not a promise. Not some fantasy written in stone. A private decision that if the right opportunity appeared, they would stop running from what they felt and finally try to explain it. But the opportunity came sooner than they expected. Something happened recently, a conversation, a change in your energy, a moment of unexpected distance, that made them realize the perfect time might never arrive. And now the words they have hidden for so long are closer to the surface than ever. They know exactly what they want you to understand first. It is the sentence they have repeatedly stopped themselves from saying, because once those words leave their mouth, there will be no pretending this connection means nothing. Something huge is waiting for you, because that sentence is not simply about love. It reveals what they secretly believe could happen between you if they finally stop being afraid. The sentence they have been holding back is far more revealing than a simple confession, because somewhere inside them, they have wanted to tell you, you are the person who made me believe I could finally stop pretending I don't need anyone. And even imagining those words makes them feel exposed. Don't skip, because this is where everything they have been hiding begins to connect. For so long, this person may have been comfortable appearing independent, controlled, and emotionally untouchable. They learned how to carry their feelings quietly. They learned how to smile when something mattered more than they wanted anyone to know. They learned how to step backward whenever closeness started becoming serious. Then you entered their emotional world, and suddenly those old defenses stopped working the way they used to. Something about you made them want to stay instead of retreat. Something about your presence made honesty feel possible. That is why they are afraid to explain why they love you. The real answer reveals as much about them as it does about you. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They have realized that you represent something they once thought they could live without, a connection where they might actually be understood rather than merely noticed. And there is one detail they keep returning to. You never had to become perfect to affect them. In fact, the moments when you were simply yourself may have mattered most. Your quiet confidence. Your unexpected softness. The way you continued moving forward even when everything was not perfectly arranged. Those details made them feel that being real around you might be safer than constantly trying to appear strong. But that possibility created another fear. If they finally show you their heart, will you still look at them the same way? Will you understand the hesitation that came before the honesty? Will you realize that their distance was sometimes an attempt to control feelings that were becoming impossible to ignore? These questions have kept them awake inside their own thoughts, but something has changed. They are starting to understand that you deserve clarity more than they need emotional protection. And the change became impossible to ignore when they imagined you genuinely moving on without them. Not as a dramatic fantasy, but as a realistic possibility. One day, they pictured you becoming busy with your own future, laughing more, growing stronger, meeting new people, and eventually no longer wondering why they had been so quiet. That image stayed with them. Don't skip. They suddenly understood that silence does not preserve a connection forever. Sometimes silence slowly teaches another person to stop waiting for answers. That realization shook the comfort out of their hesitation. They began replaying every opportunity when they could have said more. Every unfinished conversation. Every time they typed something meaningful and changed it into something ordinary. Every moment they wanted to tell you, "You matter to me more than you realize," but chose safer words instead. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They are now realizing that their greatest regret would not necessarily be hearing an answer they did not expect. Their greatest regret could be never giving you the chance to know what was true. And here is what makes this turning point so powerful. They no longer want you guessing whether you mattered. They want you to understand why. They want to tell you that you changed the emotional atmosphere around them without demanding anything. They want to admit that certain days became brighter simply because they knew they might hear from you. They want to explain why they remembered your smallest details, why your silence sometimes worried them, and why your happiness began mattering even when they received nothing in return. Yet beneath all those reasons sits the truth they have been most afraid to confront. Loving you made them imagine something beyond the present moment. Not some perfect fantasy, but the possibility of building something honest, patient, and meaningful. And once they allowed themselves to imagine that, you stopped feeling like a passing chapter. You started feeling like someone they might regret losing for the rest of their life. That is why their fear became so intense. The more meaningful the possibility became, the harder it was to risk changing it. But now the balance is shifting. Fear is still there, yet something stronger has begun standing beside it. The realization that meaningful connections require honesty eventually. Don't skip, because the next move may not look dramatic from the outside. It could begin with a simple message. A longer conversation than usual. A question that suddenly feels more personal. A moment when they stop hiding behind jokes or ordinary topics and allow the silence to become serious. You might notice their words becoming slower because they are choosing them carefully. You might sense that they are trying to reach a sentence they have avoided for far too long. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. If that moment comes, remember what has been happening beneath their hesitation. They have been fighting the instinct to retreat from something that matters deeply to them. They are beginning to understand that loving someone cannot remain meaningful if fear is allowed to speak forever. And there is still one revelation they have not faced completely. Their feelings for you did not become undeniable when they realized how much they wanted you close. They became undeniable when they realized they wanted good things for you even when those good things were not centered around them. That realization changed everything. It showed them that what they felt was deeper than attention, excitement, or curiosity. They cared about your peace, your growth, your happiness. And that is the reason they became so afraid to tell you why. Because once they say it clearly,